There are players in NBA history who are so dominant, so unstoppable, the league had to literally create rules to stop them. LeBron James.
For Dallas here in the opening period. Bibby will try again. Rushed it. James on the follow.
Screen. Posey will defend. Oh! LeBron James with no regard for human life.
Two pieces of Dwayne Wade with another steal.
3-on-1. James.
Oh, are you
LeBron
kidding
drops the anvil.
13, Portland back in front. LeBron turned his corner inside. He made Yusuf Nurkic's screensaver. 15-14. The Kevlar bench is going nuts.
LeBron James in a day.
Dozens of players have worn face masks in the NBA over the years, but if an NBA player was ever truly intimidating while doing it, it was LeBron James. So the league created a rule to stop just that. In 2014, LeBron James broke his nose during a game. But right after, he was given a protective face mask. But not just any mask, a sleek, all-black Batman-style mask. The moment he stepped on court with it, the internet exploded. He dropped 31 points in a game with the Miami Heat and looked like the final boss of basketball doing it. But the NBA? They weren't having it. Just one game later, they banned the black mask, simply because it was intimidating and obscured facial features. Translation: it looked too cool. They forced LeBron to switch to a clear mask. It may not have changed how teams played, but for one night, LeBron looked untouchable, and the league rewrote the rules just to tone him down. Intimidation is one thing, but destruction? That's a whole different story, and no one in NBA history brought more destruction to the paint than Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal. In the early 1990s, backboards and defense stood no chance against Shaq. It didn't matter what you threw at him, he was going to destroy it, literally. Shaq was so good that the league literally had to create two ways to slow him down, and the first one started when he began breaking the arena backboards. In his rookie season alone, Shaq broke 2 backboards. He was literally ripping them apart like they were made of string cheese. For example, in a game against the Phoenix Suns, he dunked so hard that even the shot clock came crashing down with it. Then, just weeks later in New Jersey, he brought down the entire backboard support yet again. But this time, it was so bad that the NBA's response was, yeah, we can't have that. So they basically had to Shaq-proof the hoops. The league reinforced every backboard with tempered glass. They installed breakaway rims with industry-level support, added hydraulic stabilizers, and started keeping emergency replacement hoops behind the bench, just in case Shaq got hungry. Basically, Shaq forced the league to change the entire way hoops were made. But breaking rims was just the beginning, because even though the NBA found a way to stop Shaq's dunks, you still couldn't stop Shaq himself from getting to the rim. And that's when the NBA met its next problem, Hack-a-Shaq rule. The Hack-a-Shaq rule was first used as an actual tactic in 1997 by Don Nelson, the coach of the Dallas Mavericks. He told one of his players, Bubba Wells, to intentionally foul Dennis Rodman whether he had the ball or not, to send him to the free throw line. This was because that season, the Worm shot a miserable 38.6% from the line. Unfortunately, this new tactic didn't work out that game, as Rodman made 9 out of 12 free throws. But 2 years later, in 1999, Nelson decided to give it another go with Shaquille O'Neal as the victim, and a new tactic was born. On this day, Shaq was the most dominant player on the court. But if you fouled him, congratulations, you sent him to the line, where he shot like he was wearing oven mitts. He once missed 11 straight free throws in a single game. Hack-a-Shaq was annoying. It was ugly, but at the time, it was legal, and it spread like wildfire. Even after Shaq retired in 2011, the rule lived on. Guys like Dwight Howard, DeAndre Jordan, and Andre Drummond became the new victims. It was unethical basketball. So, in 2016, the NBA decided to change the rules to limit the number of Hack-a-Shaqs in a game. This would speed up the game, make it more interesting for the fans, and less complicated for the broadcasters. The rule changes meant that off-ball fouling would be less of an advantage for the opposing teams. The new rules said that an off-ball foul in the last 2 minutes of a game meant the player would get one free throw and the offensive team would retain possession of the ball. Furthermore, a deliberate excessive foul would sooner be called a flagrant foul. But before Shaq even forced the NBA to rewrite the rules, there was someone so dominant, they had to invent rules just to stop him from ruining basketball entirely. Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt was one of the most physically dominant athletes the sport had ever seen, and he faced an NBA that scrambled to level the playing field during his reign. Wilt led the league in points. He broke records that still haven't been touched, even scoring 100 in a single night. But Wilt's numbers weren't the problem. His physical advantage was. He was taller than anyone, faster than most guards, and had a vertical leap that made the rim feel too low. And that's why the NBA rewrote the rules several times just to stop him. Let's start with the most ridiculous one. Back then, the paint was just 12 feet wide, and Wilt used to camp near the rim, post up, and score at will. There was nothing anyone could do. So the league literally changed the geometry of the court because of him. So in 1964, the league widened the paint from 12 feet to 16 just to push Wilt further from the basket. It was informally called the Wilt Rule. But that wasn't enough. Wilt had another advantage, his physical dominance. For example, if a teammate missed a shot, he'd simply tip it up while it was still on the rim. Back then, that was allowed, and Wilt was unstoppable at it. So once again, the NBA tightened up the offensive goal trending rule, making it illegal to touch the ball once it was on the cylinder. But for Wilt, that was just another rule to adjust to. It still wasn't enough to stop him. So the league took it further by revising the inbounding rule. Basically, when the ball was being thrown in from the baseline, Wilt was banned from leaping over defenders to grab it midair and dunk it, something which he excelled at. And if that wasn't enough, Wilt even found a loophole at the free throw line. He'd take a running start, jump from behind the line, and dunk it in since he was so tall and insanely athletic to do so. So the NBA, once again, created rules preventing free throw shooters like Wilt from leaping over the line. These rules didn't just slow Wilt, they simply rewrote the entire geometry of the game to limit his impact. But just when the league had thought it solved the big man problem, another one showed up. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Back in the late 60s, one of the most exciting moves in basketball was banned from college basketball, the dunk. While that almost sounds impossible, it actually happened. And it was all because of one player, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then known as Lou Alcindor. At the time, Kareem was a 7'2" freshman at UCLA who made winning look unfair. He was taller than everyone, more skilled than everyone, and he could dunk without leaving his tiptoes. From the moment he stepped on a college court, it was over. Lobs, rebounds, and post-ups were all instant buckets. There was no defense for it, so instead of trying to stop Kareem, the NCAA banned the dunk. So, from 1967 to 1976, for nearly a decade, no player in college basketball could dunk. They didn't call it the Kareem rule, but everyone knew it was. But instead of complaining, Kareem took that ban and turned it into a blueprint, developing a move that no one could ban, no one could block, and no one could figure out. The skyhook. A one-legged, high-arching shot that was basically basketball's cheat code. It didn't matter who you put in front of him, that ball was out of reach and already dropping through the net. Fast forward to the NBA, and that same skyhook carried him to 6 championships, 6 MVPs, and more points than any player in league history, a record that stood for 39 years. Eventually, the NCAA reversed the dunk ban in 1976 because the truth became harder to ignore. The rule wasn't just about basketball fairness, but about limiting the dominance of black athletes like Kareem, and although they took away his dunks, Kareem still became the most unstoppable scorer the game has ever seen. By the way, if you're enjoying this so far, feel free to hit subscribe. We've got a lot more coming your way. James Harden. Between 2015 and 2020, Harden reached a level of scoring that looked like cheating. He averaged 36 points a game per season. He got to an insane level where he was scoring 50 in games like it was casual. But it was all because he mastered a move that looked borderline illegal, the step back three. Then he layered it with a foul drawing ability so precise, defenders couldn't breathe near him without getting punished. And the thing is, it was all legal, at least at the time. He turned every defender's arm into a foul. He learned how to hook your hand with his arm, draw contact, and still get the shot off. He got 3 free throws every single time he did this. It was literally killing the game. So the NBA made a significant rule change during the offseason that disallowed players from leaning into defenders and relying on non-basketball moves to draw foul calls. Ever since, the numbers for Harden have dropped drastically. For example, in the 2020 to 2021 NBA season, Harden ranked 23rd in free throw attempts, though he played in only 44 games. Prior to this season, Harden led the league in free throw attempts for 6 straight seasons. But Harden wasn't the first player to force a rule change with his footwork. Let's talk about Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson. If we're talking about a player who changed the rules both on and off the pitch, Allen Iverson stands atop that list. He was so good with his dribbles that he made grown men stumble, fall, and freeze with one move. In fact, that was what he did as a rookie to MJ himself. But the crazy part is that move, however beautiful and deadly, wasn't technically legal. See, back in the early 2000s, Iverson's signature crossover, the quick hesitation, the deadly extra step, became his trademark. It was absolutely unguardable. But according to the league, Iverson was towing the line of palming the ball and dribbling with it. Simply put, his move involved too many carries. Iverson's move sparked debates, headlines, and even instructional breakdowns on what counted as a legal dribble. Eventually, the NBA clarified its guidelines to tighten up what was allowed, essentially targeting Iverson's signature style. Despite this rule change, which was meant to slow Iverson, AI never slowed down. Instead, he simply changed the rhythm of ball handling forever. But Iverson's influence wasn't just on the court. With tattoos, chains, and baggy fits, Iverson brought authentic hip-hop culture into the NBA. And once again, the league responded by creating the first ever dress code in 2005. That year, Commissioner David Stern made the NBA the first major sports league to enforce a dress code. The mandate that required players like Iverson to swap out baggy pants and throwback jerseys for sports coats, dress shoes, and business casual. It was unofficially called the AI rule. But while Iverson's rule change was cultural, the next one was created to stop Michael Jordan. By the early 90s, MJ was dominating everything, scoring titles, MVPs, playoff series, and he did it with a ridiculous blend of footwork, hang time, and body control. But that control also drew contact, a lot of it. Jordan mastered the art of drawing fouls mid-air, often hanging in the air longer than his defenders, contorting his body, and still finishing the play. It was poetry, unless you were guarding him. So teams started to fight back. Literally, they got physical. They shoved, grabbed, and hammered him mid-dive. That was the strategy from the Bad Boy Pistons and their infamous Jordan rules. They weren't actual league rules, but they were a defensive blueprint built to bully one man. It was simple: hit Jordan before he takes off, double him early, make him regret entering the paint. Eventually, though, the league saw what was happening. The physicality wasn't just defense, it was borderline assault. So after Jordan's era of bruises, the NBA quietly tightened hand-checking rules, limited contact on dives. But that wasn't the only rule created to limit Jordan's influence. Because back when every NBA player's sneakers were either black or white Adidas shoes, Michael Jordan chose to rock the black and red Air Jordan 1s in a preseason game, and the league immediately banned them from regular season use. So Michael became the first ever player to challenge the NBA and wear whatever shoes he wanted, even if it meant a $5,000 per game fine. As a result of Jordan's defiance and Nike's marketing, the majority of players in the league now wear Nike and Jordan shoes. Bruce Bowen. Bowen was notorious for contesting jump shots, then sliding his foot under the shooter's landing spot. It didn't always look intentional, but it kept happening, and the injuries started to pile up. He sprained Steve Francis's ankle, nearly did the same to Jamal Crawford, and eventually the NBA had seen enough. They created a new rule: shooters must be given a safe place to land, no more sneaky foot slides, no more ankle roulette. His coach, Greg Popovich, defended him like an overprotective dad, saying, "People who cry about it are just frustrated going against Bruce." Then he tells Bruce, "You're the best defender in the league, don't change a thing." Well, that statement came back to haunt him. Years later, Zaza Pachulia used the exact same move, closing out under Kawhi Leonard in the 2017 Western Conference Finals. Kawhi sprained his ankle and ended up missing the rest of the series, which eventually ended the Spurs' last real title shot. But immediately after, the NBA doubled down on the rule, subsequently reinforcing the rule and punishing reckless closeouts as flagrant fouls. Rajon Rondo. In the early 2010s, Rajon Rondo was known for his elite vision, crafty playmaking, and his headband. But Rondo's style of wearing the headband was different. Sometimes he flipped it upside down, other times he turned the iconic NBA logo backward. It became a fashion statement, a trend, but the NBA didn't like it, so they banned the upside-down headband entirely. From that point on, players were required to wear the logo facing forward, no exceptions. But that wasn't the only time the league policed fashion. Remember the ninja-style headbands? Yeah, those got banned too. Why? According to the league, they were a safety concern. Larry Bird. Not every rule was meant to stop a player. Some were made to keep them. In the 1980s, Larry Bird wasn't just dominating with his jumper and trash talk, he was reshaping how NBA teams handled their money. In 1983, the league introduced a salary cap to promote parity and limit reckless spending. But there was a problem. What if a team wanted to keep its homegrown superstar? Enter the Larry Bird exception. The rule allowed teams to go over the salary cap to reassign their own players as long as that player had spent 3 consecutive years with the team without being waived or switching clubs. Bird was the first player ever re-signed under this exception, and it worked so well, they named the rule after him. Over time, it evolved into 3 categories. Firstly, the full Bird rights, maximum freedom, 5-year max deals, even over the cap. The early Bird, after 2 years, up to 175% of their previous salary. Then the non-Bird, for players with less than 2 years, small raises were allowed. These rights changed everything. Franchise no longer had to choose between loyalty and flexibility. And even today, every time a team bends the cap to keep their superstar around, that's Larry Bird's impact, not just on the box score, but in the very blueprint of how teams build champions. Trent Tucker. Trent Tucker won an NBA championship with the Chicago Bulls in 1993, but he will always be remembered for something he did against Michael Jordan's Bulls, not with them. Before Tucker played with MJ, he spent 9 seasons with the New York Knicks as one of the most dreaded three-point shooters during that era. During his stint in the Big Apple, Tucker immortalized himself with one iconic play. In 1990, when the Bulls visited the Knicks at Madison Square Garden, MJ struggled that night, shooting just 9-25 from the field, but finished with 26 points. Meanwhile, Patrick Ewing had a big game for the Knicks with 33 points and 12 rebounds. The game was tied at 106 when Scottie Pippen fouled Mark Jackson with 0.1 seconds left on the clock. Because the Bulls weren't in a penalty, the Knicks only inbounded the ball and needed to come up with a game-winning play with 1/10 of a second to work with it. New York inbounded the ball. Tucker caught it, turned, and drilled a 3 to propel the Knicks to a 109-106 win over the Bulls. It was this shot that forced the league to change the rule. The game was the first and the last to be decided in that manner. A few weeks later, the NBA announced a rule that at least 0.3 of a second was needed on the clock for a catch-and-shot play to happen. That rule is on page 55 of the NBA rulebook, heading Comments on the Rules, subhead Expiration of Time. Charles Barkley. At 6 foot 6 inches, 260 pounds, Barkley was able to turn his back to the basket, put the opponent on his backside, and methodically back them up beneath the rim before laying the ball into the hoop. This was with complete ease. It cannot be stressed how underrated and underappreciated Charles Barkley was for his actual game, not just hysterical humor. However, the process was often tedious and ate up a lot of time, so with the intent of speeding up gameplay, the NBA created the Barkley Rule, also known by annoying New Yorkers as the Mark Jackson Rule. This states that players dribbling below the foul line can only face away from the basket for up to 5 seconds. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories where basketball meets madness. Drop a comment with the player you think the NBA could never limit, and I'll see you in the next one.